Speaker is Diane Robertson, and then Randy Pickerel. Diane, are you still here? There we are. Welcome, Diane.
I have all my equipment here.
Was a phone left here?
I just gave it back.
Anybody see a phone sitting in the audience?
We got it.
You got it. Okay.
Yes, please. Screen up here. Let's start with that one.
Okay.
Part 2. Diane Robertson, 405 Waterside Drive, Carborough. I've lived here approximately 32 years, which means most of my life. I want to just start with what we just heard, which was helpful, that the $6 million, this is a quote from the newspaper about the Long Branch Trail that was just referenced. The $6 million will pay for a 1.2-mile extension north of from MLK to 25th Street, which by my calculation is in the city. A recent release from Manning's office said the trail will repurpose the former railroad corridor for pedestrians and cyclists and connect the educational and health facilities. I recently joined a walk with an engineer along a small portion of the proposed alignment who pointed out that because of the location of the creek and the sensitive riparian buffer along the alignment, and I have that in bold letters because it's a term everyone should look up and understand, concrete would not be appropriate in those areas. She suggested other materials, not concrete. She asked if we knew about the health of the creek. Were there any fish? Here are the residents. Could you just flip through those for me? Here are the Carborough residents who can't speak for themselves in opposition to the destruction of their habitat, which means they will not survive. Come on. You can go on. This shows an alternative alignment. You can go on. This shows something that already exists, an upland alignment, and we'll just leave that there. In December 2022, the Paris Climate Agreement added biodiversity as essential to combating the climate crisis due to the tremendous loss of species from human development in their habitat. This project would also reduce the natural resilience of our community by increasing the impervious surface, which, by the way, we are currently taxed for the impervious surface. So to have the town build more impervious surface, where science says it should not be, seems totally out of order. Today, there was a code red air quality alert for the Triangle because of fires in Nova Scotia. They usually have 1,000 acres of fires a year. This year, 27,000 acres are on fire. I bring that up because we have to plan for the future for things we don't know will happen. Democratic representative government exists in large part to solve problems. What problem is this limited engagement process solving? I refer you to questions and information that I shared with you on February 14th for your work session. I believe that these should be answered before committing staff time and taxpayer money for a public engagement process that is incomplete because it was built on a single alignment from a 14-year-old concept study, not a study, a concept plan.
Thank you, Diane.
I add that we could be working with stakeholders for repurposing the Sewell School Railroad line, which will be retired when the UNC's coal plant closes. This suggestion was made to me by Councilman Danny Nowell when we met in February. Yes, this will happen. Rails to Trails, as you just heard, is a model that exists and is far much less expensive to construct and maintain than a concrete road on a winding creek bed in a floodplain in the forest. Have you considered the construction impact in the forest, bulldozers, jackhammers, possibly dynamite to remove ancient rock formations that will impact existing home foundations? I refer you to the construction along Estes Extension or Estes Road and I-40 if you haven't seen what it takes to put in concrete in anywhere. but certainly in a forest, which means removal of trees, which is the only thing we know that really mitigates carbon. If the existing path is compacted, all opportunities to address the problem are not being explored. It is not good governance, and it begs the question, why? There is an upland alternative. Next slide. Oh, there it is. There's an upland alternative that exists. This ideological commitment by most of the council to the riparian buffer seems more about pork and politics than good policy. If the existing path is compacted, it can be restored and improved, but not with an impervious road. The forest is not an amenity, a word used by a council member to describe it. Bowland Forest is a natural resource to be protected. It is not a park. We heard a lot about parks. This is not a park. The greenway planned along Bowland Creek is in contradiction to best practices for the riparian buffer and will reduce decarbonization. There is no imperative for a greenway in the riparian buffer of Bowland Creek. A greenway in this case is a misnomer, as it will be a concrete road in a sensitive ecological site. The story of the Western world is that of exploitation and colonization. No number of land acknowledgement statements will undo the damage of the past. However, our actions today can both acknowledge and stop the degradation that environmental imperialism has brought to the planet. Unlike the indigenous people who once lived here, we do not consider the impact of our decisions for 7 generations. This form of environmental gentrification has no place in a community that seeks to be a leader and progressive. Carborough likes to consider itself progressive, which I have in quotes, because in this context, I don't understand what that means. As you look at the priorities through an equity lens, this will be situated in a part of town that has primarily HOAs. Yes, I live in one of those. How does the cost of this square with limited users who have the time and resources for leisurely cycling? Might these resources be used to support other concerns that serve a broader or different population? Those advocating for a paved road in the forest represent a kind of privilege, advocating for amenities for themselves to the detriment of the natural world, which is what those with privilege have done forever. I have more, but I'm being timed out, but I will just date myself and say this is paving paradise to put up a parking lot.
Diane. Next speaker is Martha Holzer